Yeah. Hey, it works. Look at me. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pirates Cove 45. Can't believe we've done 45 of these things. I am, like the title suggests, flying solo today. Our normal host, our beloved Paul Phillip, um, ended up deciding to expand his family, and that happened recently. And so he is home. He's home with his family. Everybody's good. Um, Great things, but he will not be able to join us today for obvious reasons. So it's just me. Hello, Balo. We're going to follow a normal routine. Obviously, I'm not the host that Paul is, but we're going to go through it. And then we're going to talk about, so we're going to go over the normal routine. So watch the highlight film and go over the game, talk about the game a little bit. And then what I want to do, since it's just me today, is kind of talk about what, in my opinion, thus far, the biggest differences um, between the AFL and the ELF so far. So I think that's an interesting compare and contrast because there are several differences, glaring differences, and so we can get into that um, shortly. As always, if you guys have questions, please don't hesitate to write me in the chat. I will stop when it's convenient and answer those as always. And yeah, let's enjoy ourselves for the next 45 minutes. So I don't have anybody to interview, so it might be a little bit shorter of an episode, but short and sweet is never a bad thing, I think, particularly in media. Yeah, so week six, Leipzig Kings came to us. We played here in Tivoli Stadium um, around I think I'm not 100% sure how many spectators. It was a little bit smaller than Frankfurt. Yeah, 3,300, 500 less than Frankfurt. But still, we've been getting really good attendance throughout this league and really consistent attendance, right around 3,500 to 4,000, which is great. I think the fans really wanted to see something new, and they're coming out and supporting us in a big way. So Leipzig came to us. Unfortunately for Leipzig, their starting quarterback Jordan Barlow sustained a shoulder injury, a collarbone injury. I think several weeks ago. Ended up not starting but playing through it in the Stuttgart game. But apparently the club and himself decided that it was no longer able or something that he's able to play through. So they came here with their backup quarterback, um, which is always difficult. It's always difficult. I think it's a situation where you're just trying to do your job well and execute as well as possible, but I'm sure it puts a damper on things and lowers the expectation potentially to win. Um, and the guy, he was just overwhelmed. It was probably his first time at this level, and the game got out of hand quickly. So let's go over to. Sorry, I'm not as fast as Paul at this. Where's the arrow? Here we go. Okay, so if we look at the game score or the game book, the first quarter 28 nothing. I mean, um, in this league, it's really difficult to even score 28 points. So when you do it in the first quarter, that's an indication of just a lopsided affair. The game got out of hand quickly. We scored 28, but it wasn't on drives. When you have turnovers late or deep in your own field position, it puts a lot of strain on the defense. We got the ball first, and we had a really, really good drive, a drive to be really happy about. I think we've been starting much faster as an offense since the Cologne game. Uh, Thank you, thank you. Hello. Um, Much faster since the Cologne game, which was a point of emphasis for us. And I think our game planning and Coach Kyle Callahan's been doing a great job. And in the first half, we've been doing really well as an offense. And and that's indication of those first drives, right? We were prepared. We were prepared to what they see. But then, when an offense is prepared and executing well, like we did on the first drive, but then we're getting the ball, on the 20-yard line or the 10-yard line or whatever the case may be. That's how games get out of hand quickly, and that's what happened. As you guys can see here, it's 11-minute mark. Tobias Bonatti scored his first touchdown. 6-minute mark, I scored on a QB sneak, and then it's 4:49. pass to Marco Schneider, force 16, pass to Tobias, or run by Tobias Bonatti. So when you're scoring 3 touchdowns in a little over 2 minutes of the game, that's how blowouts happen relatively quickly. Is it true that backups got in the game pretty quickly? I mean, I guess it's all in context pretty quickly, but yeah, we were rotating much earlier than we usually would. Obviously, in the second half, there was a lot of rotation, which is a good thing. It allows guys that don't get that much playing time some experience, and allows our coaches to evaluate them and give them feedback, which is normally not the case. But it's not something that you would expect in the ELF to happen often. I think this was just a rare occasion that we caught Leipzig on a down day. As we continue in the second quarter, we scored 1 touchdown. Lucas Hasselhoff a 5-yard run, and then second half only was able to kick a field goal. So you would like, in our opinion, we're super happy with the outcome in terms of the first half, but in the second half, once you do start rotating, you would love to see the similar production consistently throughout, and we weren't able to do that. And that's something that there's a point of emphasis for us moving forward. Is, hey, when guys inevitably get injured or we have to start rotating, we have to maintain a certain amount of production. Yes, if I am wrong, at the end of the first half, backups were in. At least some. That only means that this league is growing a lot. That is true. The league is growing very, very quickly. Doubling in size in 2 years is quite a lot. Thank you for your follow. AT is 8-0. I want to touch on that later. When I talk about AFL to ELF, we're gonna talk about that. I have a prediction by the end of the season. Okay, so as we look at the stats, the team stats here, passing yards 213 to 208, so similar production there. The completion percentage is not great, and 3 interceptions on the Leipzig side is not what you want to see. I would like to see mine or ours efficiency a little bit higher than 21 for 32, but still nothing to be, nothing to sneeze at. Total yards 324 was actually less than our average. And our defense allowed 236, which was right around their average. Part of the reason why we didn't have as many yards as usual is we had great field position. I mean, when you score 28 points but only have 150 yards of production because of field position, then that's kind of how that happens. Okay, and then individual stats. Bonatti, another strong game, averaging 5 yards per carry. I sneak around and get some rushing yards as well. Hasselhoff, not as productive as usual, but it's great to see those young Austrian guys. Well, Toby's not that young; he's been around for a while. Really producing at a high level. The receiving game is something that I want to talk about. You can really see the even production. This is 2 weeks in a row. I think when our offense is at its best, all the receivers are dangerous, and all the receivers can have anywhere from 50 to 80 yards on any given day. And I think that's unique in the ELF, that we have, I think I'm the 3rd highest passer or 4th highest passer in terms of yards, but our receivers are very, individually low in the rankings because it's so well distributed. That's something that I take a lot of pride in. And then on the defensive side of the ball, obviously AJ Wentland is just all over the place. Great to see him again. And our defense also very well distributed. Lucky having a great game. Larry also having a great game. And then obviously our DBs the last 2 weeks have just been on absolute fire with pass breakups and interceptions. Shout out to Vincent Mueller for dropping another pick 6. Raiders' offensive line is a monster. Yes, our offensive line is playing very, very well. Shout out to them. Shout out to them and our offensive line coach, Coach Dominic Bauer. I think they are rated the number one offensive line in the ELF at the moment. They gave up 1 sack on the weekend in the stat sheet, but actually I just called the protection wrong. So they've been doing a phenomenal job, and that's the reason why our offense is I don't know if it's still the top, but one of the top producers in terms of yards in the ELF. Did you already visit the official stats page of the ELF? No, no, I didn't know they even had one. Am I here? Can I see it here? Schedules, stats. Let's go. Let's get stats. So, okay. This is new, I guess. This is part of their renovation. Yeah, so this is cool. Um, and so if you see, yeah, I'm the third leading passer, so around 1,500 yards in terms of yards. But then if you look at receivers, our top receiver is Schneider Marco in terms of yards at 362. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think that's right. So the Vikings are also very similar in that regard. They can spread it around. But, when you look at some of these other top passers, obviously Zach Edwards has Kyle Sweet. Jan Weinreich has Quentin Pounds, but ours is a little more differently distributed. There's no that the whole receiving core is a weapon, not necessarily one individually. Um, yeah, I agree with the stats page. I was very surprised that they didn't have this last year. I mean, stats are so vital to how people follow a league, um, that it's really vital, and particularly when the ELF probably starts doing fantasy football. It's just a better and better and better way to quantify production, but also for fans to follow the league. I was surprised that they didn't have that last year as well. Okay, so let's move on to the highlights. I'll take off the sound because it is tough to see. What do you guys think about the kickoff return? Um, I'm kind of indifferent towards it, but I wonder, as a spectator, as a fan, what you guys think of the kickoff return rules in comparison to a normal kickoff return. Okay, so this is a game within a game. Leipzig's been known to just bring a lot of pressure and put a lot of heat on the quarterback and force them into poor decisions. And so on the first drive, they dropped 8 against me once or twice. And then, of course, on the next play, they bring pressure. So as a quarterback, you really have to be able to have answers for both, um, because Leipzig's very diverse in how they tried to attack us on on Sunday. And there's a big run by Bonatti. I think the key to our offense moving forward is, how well are we going to be able to score once we get to the red zone? I think we'll get to the red zone, or at least in that part of the field often. It's just how well are we able to execute once we get there. Because stuff like this we're so good at. We're so good at our intermediate passing game, which is really kind of a staple of a Cal Callahan offense and kind of fits my game perfectly. And then every once in a while I'm able to do this, even though getting the end zone, Sean Will James just put me on my back. Um, but again, once we get down here, we got to be able to punch it in. And here's why I have whatever 5 rushing touchdowns on the year. A lot of QB sneaks. QB sneaks are the best thing for stats ever. Fall forward and get a rushing touchdown. Great interception by Vincent. It's just a tall task for that kid. Our DBs are playing so well, and our defense in general is playing so well. It's a tough ask of that guy. Marco. Small target, but man, he catches everything. He is a hell of a player, but he's gonna be even better in the future. It's crazy. Good, cousin Dominique. Would you get in the zone, right? I mean, it's always nice to set us up at the 15-yard line. This is an example of what I was talking about. If you start drives at whatever the last picks gave us the ball at the 20 or so. This one gives us the ball at the 15. And, this is because of turnovers on their side, it allowed us to score 3 touchdowns within 2 minutes. And we had decent field position here, but we were able to actually maintain a drive. Another example of Tobias Bonatti playing really, really well, breaking an open field tackle from AJ Wintland, which is no easy task. And then just taking what the defense gives us. Pause this real quick. Talking about the new kickoff rules. Yeah, I think so too. I think I don't know if it takes a little bit. Yeah, I think it does help reduce injuries. Although, on the first kickoff return of the season for us, well, we were kicking off to the Vikings. No, I forget who exactly. I think we got the ball first, actually. Um, but there was an injury on the opening kickoff of our ELF season, or both of the Vikings and ours ELF season. I hope he's doing well, but outside of that, I haven't seen a lot of injuries, and yeah, um, and yeah, I agree. If it's safer, then I'm all for it. I think it's just something that um, guys will get better in scheming and evolving. It's just new for everybody, but it does take a. I don't even think it takes some explosivity out of the game because has been some kickoff return touchdowns. It just, I don't know, looks different. Maybe it'll just take some time to get used to, I guess. Okay. Uh, Back to the highlights. Touchdown run by Hasselhunter. This is just another example of when the running back gets in the end zone without even being touched for the most part. The offensive line is doing a great job. And then 34-0 at halftime, and it was time to let some other guys play. Good first down run by their quarterback. Our can we talk about this for a little bit? Our field goal block unit has I think they've blocked a field goal every game since Stuttgart, so 3 games in a row. I think they got a penalty against Frankfurt, but nevertheless, it's so difficult to block a field goal, and we're doing it with such regularity that it's very, very impressive. Shout out to Coach Ball for manning up that unit. Catch a run down the sideline by Bonatti. He's such a dual threat. You really have to pay attention to him out of the backfield, or he's gonna rip off big chunks like that. So sad that we have to beat us by ourselves. Football Austria can be proud. 4 weeks without a loss in Europe. Yeah, yeah. Like I said, we'll get to that a little bit later. The Austrian teams are really, really doing well at the moment. Now here's a big catch and run by Stretch Jones. I think is his nickname. Uh, Him and Dablé. I mean, talk about some receivers. That's another comparison that I want to draw later. Like those guys are NFL receivers, and they very much look like NFL receivers. I mean, they're both 6'5" plus, and it's like we haven't seen stuff like that before. And then that's when they're able to do that. Tony Anderson is a big guy as well, but there's just sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah, look at the Arnold. Take it to the house. He's striding out, but was just able to be cut off. And the best play in football, a victory formation knee um, for us. So yeah, 4 victories in a row. Going into the bye week with that number 4 spot. Um, let's go back to full chat real quick. With that number 4 spot in in the ELF. I think we have the tiebreaker because of point differential with the Rhine Fire. And yeah, we're sitting here at the the midway point, the exact midway point. We've played all the opponents once, and um, I think based on where we had started after the Cologne game, I think all of us can be thrilled that we kind of control our own destiny in terms of the playoffs. Obviously we're going to need some help to win the conference, but in terms of the wild card spot, it's kind of ours to lose a little bit if we keep playing the way we're playing and keep building every week. It really does feel like we're getting better every single week, um, which is what you want, right? It doesn't really matter how well it doesn't really matter how well you're playing at the beginning of the season if you kind of fall apart by the end of it. And injuries have a part to play with that, but also just how you approach a season, fatigue, and doing all the small things right. And I think that was the biggest turnaround for us. I said this in an interview after the game. I think we just started focusing on the little things more and realizing they matter more than ever. Um, and that's when quick turnarounds happen. I mean, our defense is playing so much better, which is a tribute to Coach Heron and those guys over there. I mean, from Cologne to what was the next game? Stuttgart? No, it was week 3. So long ago, feels like. I think Stuttgart was week 4. No, Berlin. From Berlin to Stuttgart to Frankfurt to now. I mean, it's just been an absolute changing of the page. Absolutely different defense, playing with so much better energy and confidence, and then the offense just gets a little bit better, and we're starting to get on a roll. I guess we are on a roll. And then we're getting hot going into our most important game of the season next week. And obviously, they had a very emotional win. The Vikings against Barcelona, the two undefeateds facing each other in Barcelona. And they ended up pulling out a 19-0 fourth quarter to end up winning that game by a touchdown. And very, very impressive win. Shows a lot of character on their side. Although you could say 3/4 of the game Barcelona outplayed them, it just kind of they fell apart at the end, especially the turnover. There was kind of two giant mistakes that you can't win if you're going to beat a team the quality of Vienna. Dropping the snap at the end of the game and then letting up a 3rd and 25 or whatever it was post for a 90-yard touchdown to lose the game. I mean, those things just can't happen, but you have to. If you're the Vikings, you take advantage of those mistakes, and they did, and that's what good teams do, championship level teams do. And so I'm sure Barcelona's kicking themselves right now, but in the long run, it won't hurt Barcelona as much of it as it would have helped us. If the Vikings had lost, we'd be playing for first place, kind of with the tiebreaker 2 weeks from now. But like I said, we control our own destiny. If we win at a high rate in the second half of the season, it looks good that we're in. And once you're in the playoffs, nothing matters. Nothing matters what happened in the regular season. So we're excited. We're in a good spot, and just focus on getting better every week. So let's go to some of these comments and questions. Agree, Austrian football really boosted the league. Want to talk about that in a little bit. Now we need more fans of games in Austria. We've been pretty happy with our attendance in Innsbruck games, but always could have more. How important is the bye week for a team? After, just to kind of give a kind of look behind the curtains in terms of structure. So what a Raiders player has been doing at the moment, we've had 3 two-a-days in May. So we had a two-a-day weekend. So Saturday, Sunday, 2 practices a day for 3 straight weeks in May. And then we went straight into the season against the Vikings, right? So we've had 4 practices, then 6 games straight. And these games in the ELF are not finesse games. They're not easy on the body. So it's very important from a physical standpoint. I can tell you myself, I mean, I feel great this season and far better than I did last season in terms of body and energy. But you still just get bumps and bruises that add up. So if you can get a full week off, at least from games. We practice tonight and tomorrow night, then have Friday off. So we have 5 days completely of no practice or a game. And that means the world. And in terms of mentally, in terms of energy, you kind of get to reset, right? Like when you're in season, it's hard to describe. When you're in season, it's like, at least for me, but I think a lot of players are this way. It's like week by week by week. So it's like, okay, what do we have to do this week to win on the weekend? All right, boom, that one's over. Next week, boom, that was. So you kind of just get lost in this week to week to week to week cycle. And then when you get a week off where you don't get a game, you can kind of step back and reevaluate things in terms of a big picture, in terms of a macro level as opposed to a micro level. And so mentally, it's so beneficial too to kind of step back, reevaluate things, get the energy levels back, and kind of go into, especially with such an important game like the Vikings, prepare and self scout and do all these things. So mentally and physically, bye weeks are so crucial, particularly when they're in the middle or towards the end of the season. The best Austrian football brought to the league was that it proved that there is really good Austrian players. Yes, they're very, very good Austrian players. Yes, the Austrian motivated me to move his ass to a stadion. This hard work. Okay. It was an amazing game. Yes, the defense is legit. Yes, unbelievable. Yes. In reference to the Barcelona Vikings game, I'm excited for the next Kroger Raiders at Vikings. Yes, me too. See you in the General Arena. I hope everybody's there. I hope the stadium's packed. For the Dragons Vikings game, shouldn't the Dragons have played down the clock in the fourth quarter? Yeah, there's different philosophies for that. I think they were running the ball really well for a lot of the game, but they didn't seem to be at least consistent with that, but they did have some success with it. But at the end of the day, you just have to score, right? Like you don't want to be too conservative where you don't give yourself enough time to do what you need to do. So there's kind of two sides of that coin. But I think they were in perfect position. They were in absolutely fine position to at least take the lead and give themselves a really good position to win the game, and they weren't able to execute. At least they should be in prevent on 3rd and 20 from the 10-yard line. Yeah. I'm not a defense coordinator, wouldn't pretend to be, but I think that's a situation where you just can't let people behind you, even if it's somebody as explosive as Boa. No, good. Great comments. Thank you for being such an active chat. If you have any more questions or anything, just go ahead and write it, and I'll stop and answer it like I've been doing. Sorry, I have to get a water break. It's a lot of talking when you're doing it yourself. Good. So now what I want to talk about is kind of the differences that I've seen between the Austrian Football League and the ELF as a player and as an observer, and also talk about kind of my predictions in terms of the Austrian teams for the rest of the season and kind of how well Austria has been showing. So the biggest differences that I see from the AFL to the ELF this year is that, I mean, it's easy to say that the overall level of play is higher. It most certainly is, especially from teams that we've played. We haven't played a bad team yet. Stuttgart's struggling, but you obviously saw how close they were, and a couple changes here and there, and now they're competing with Frankfurt and going to overtime. They're not a bad football team. They have a lot of good players. The margin of error is so much smaller because everybody's good. If you go to Cologne and don't do what you're supposed to, you're going to lose, just like we did. Even though they're coming out to be one of the lower teams in the league, at least bottom half. They've been getting injuries too and everything like that. But everybody can beat everybody for the most part. Istanbul is obviously a different scenario, but you have 11 really, really good football teams. And when you're scouting them or you're looking at them, there's no single person on the field, or most of the time, that just stands out as a kid or a guy who can't play. Like, hey, we're going to go after this guy. We're going to attack this guy. Obviously, there's better players and worse players, but I think the level isn't higher because the best players got better, from the AFL to the ELF, but the bottom has risen, if that makes sense. You know, the floor of the quality of players has risen to the point where it's not so obvious of like, okay, that this club is struggling because those couple players shouldn't even be on the field. Um, as we get more and more injuries, like you saw with Leipzig, maybe they had a couple guys on the field that you weren't expect to be ELF players because of injuries. But, you know, through the first 6 games of the season, that was the only time that we really experienced that, because everybody's been really good and it's been really high level football. Like the Berlin game was a really high level football, right? The Frankfurt game was really high level football. The Cologne game was really high level of offenses. Defenses could be improved on both sides. The Vienna game was really good football. So, but again, it's because the floor has been risen up, because you can fill holes in your roster with imports, right? Like, I think the rule this year is 8 Europeans and four Americans, as opposed to the Austrian league, which we were playing in. The rules we were playing in were 2 Americans. Or I think you could dress 3 and play 2, or is that CEFL? No, it's just play 2, dress 2, play 2. And so you're able to fill holes in your roster far better than you could in the AFL, and that shows. And that makes a big, big, big difference in my opinion. Did someone watch the Vikings Dragon games on Zap TV? There were 2 guys with head coach Summer broadcasting. No, I didn't watch that, but Coach Summer does a great job of broadcasting these games. He's really good talker, does a really good job. So when you bring the bottom of the talent up, right? That means oftentimes the IQ of the players, or the experience at least of the players, football IQ or the experience of the players. Oh, was it bad? Oh, usually does a good job. I'm sorry if it was not good. So the experience of the football level is higher. So it seems like defenses are able to do more, right? And offenses as well. There's more diversity to the game. There's more pro style concepts as well as spread concepts, where AFL was almost all more college spread type of offenses and defenses. Well, offenses, so defenses react. But here there's a lot more diversity. There's in the defense, like when you played in the Austrian football league, most of the time, for most teams, you had like one set defense to one set formation, and they vary off of that. And the ELF, it's not really that way, you know. Like they really keep you guessing. And as a quarterback, you know, if you've watched some of our games, you know, you see me doing a lot of pre-snap communication, because, you know, it's not exactly what we game planned. It's similar. It's in the realm of what we game plan, but it's not exactly what we expect. Where in the AFL, oftentimes it was exactly what we expected or figured out in the first 2 drives. So on-field execution has become much harder because there's more diversity in the looks that we're getting, which brings me to game planning as well. I'll stop real quick to see. We watched it in Innsbruck at the Raiders TNT Sports Bar. When do you think the Rams, does it make sense to let the FO go? What does a new team need to keep up in the NFL or the ELF? Okay, Balo, good question. I think that the market size of Istanbul is extremely enticing to a European football league. Coupled that with the success of the Koç Rams in the Turkish league and international, and really well financially supported, or at least that was the assumption. So when you see those 2 things as a league, you're going, okay, you have an established club with infrastructure, you have financial backing, and you have a massive market. So those are all check. That's what you want to see, right? Where Innsbruck is kind of the opposite in terms of market size, but where you can't underestimate, especially in this league, and especially as we move forward, you have to have this foundation of really good players, and you have to have a lot of them. You have to have, 40 really good national players Um, and that's really tough. That's a tough ask for a developing American football country like Turkey. I imagine Turkey is. I'm no expert. And then obviously, like it, we were always perceived, and I think we are one of the more professional leagues in Europe in terms of organization. But even for us, the step between the AFL or the Austrian League and the ELF was a huge step. It was a huge step in professionalism, a huge step in work and tasks. So those two things can't be underestimated when expanding. And because the ELF is expanding so fast, you could see more Istanbul Rams. And, maybe it's a game where we just the league gives them support and hopefully they figure it out eventually. Um, but it's a really, I can tell you from experience, it's a really tall task. It's really, really difficult. Um, so philosophically, I don't want to speak for the league or criticize Esme, because I think talking about a tough task is being a commissioner of an expanding professional football league in Europe. But yeah, I think when having a new franchise, the national foundation of players is really, really important. And that's part of the reason why the Austrian teams are doing so well, is because the foundations were so strong of national players. You're fortifying really good clubs with more imports that have the organizational background to be able to handle the growth. Um, Good. Most because there's much Viking games. They would be for the Raiders too. I saw. Yeah, I heard about this. They were very much pro Vikings, right? And talking about our team. I heard about that from some Raiders fans. Yeah, you know the Vikings, the Hauptstadt teams are always a little favorite, I think. Rams will work hard the next time. That is not professional, I would say. Yeah, you would like to be as unbiased as possible when you're broadcasting, but I heard that they were not. But he's the national team head coach, so of course, and he gets a lot of his players from the Vikings. Um, yes, kisses to the Paul and family. Is Habertein's ankle injury serious? Luckily, no. I don't know any details. I don't know. I haven't. I'm not going to divulge anything, but we're going to be okay in that regard, and he's going to be okay. Has the playbook increased or decreased during the season? Good question. I think I can only speak for the offense in general, but the offensive playbook has not increased, so to say. But the game plans, I think what we bring into a game and what we have to do during a game has increased. So that goes back to kind of the diversity of what we're seeing. We have to be prepared, even if it's something we just practiced in camp. It's installed, and we might have to pull on it, during a game because the defenses adjust, and then we have to adjust, and so we might have to. We've expanded our game plans, and also just have to adjust in game, which just happened literally every single game where we're on the sideline, redrawing things up, talking, Coach Bauer, Coach Callahan, and I, and that happens every single game. So it's more the game plans that have expanded, not the playbooks, so to say. Good. I think when you are in Austria and an Austrian team is playing, you can be some kind. Yeah, sure. I have no quarrels with that. So moving forward, do you guys have a replacement for the import running back? Maybe. But if we don't, I think Toby and Hassie have done a phenomenal job, Bonatti and Hasselvanta. But we'll find out. Longer games. I didn't know if that would be like. I didn't know how big of a factor that would actually be going from the AFL, which is 12-minute quarters, college rules, to 15-minute quarters. No, it's most certainly noticeable. Last game wasn't so tough because we rotated or whatever the case may be. But an average game, I want to say in the AFL for the offense, it would be roughly 40 to 50 snaps, right? we've had games, multiple games in the ELF of 70 snaps or more. So it is a significant jump in the amount of time that you're on the field. There's so many more plays than there was in the AFL. And that really takes a toll. And that's why you have to have those 40 national players, because you're going to need all of them supplemented by imports. Because as you see, like Leipzig was beat up. They weren't just missing a quarterback. They were missing multiple starters on defense too. And it shows, right? Like you have to have deep roster. And that's probably one thing that the Vikings are demonstrating pretty well, that they have deep rosters. And we've been lucky to have somewhat of injury luck at the moment, knock on wood. But, even when we've had injuries, we've had guys be able to step up and play well. And so the long quarters are so different, and you're going to need to build really, really deep rosters and prepare guys. And that's why when we rotated against Leipzig, we would like to see better results, because we're a couple plays away from needing all of these guys. And the risk of injury is so much higher because, A, everybody's bigger and stronger, but also just there's so many more chances because of just how many more snaps you play on the field. And so lastly, that I wanna talk about, huge fan of Bernardi. Yeah, me too. Not only is he extremely good looking, he's a hell of a football player as well. The last thing I want to talk about is the Austrian teams. So the Austrian teams are currently 10-2 in the ELF, and we're one. We lost against Cologne, but I think it's, most people would say that, we're the better team, and most times that we play, we would beat them. So, theoretically, it could be an easy world that the only teams that have beaten an Austrian team is an Austrian team. But being 10-2 as a starter in this new league just shows you the quality of play of the Austrian players. And I think by the end of the season, there's a real possibility that the best two teams in the league could be Austrian teams. I would hope that both Austrian teams make the playoffs, but it could be that nobody wants to play the Austrian teams even in the playoffs. Now, Barcelona's a really good team. Hamburg's a really good team. Rhein-Neckar a really good team. Frankfurt's a really good team. Berlin's a really good team. You know what I mean? But the Austrian teams have shown very, very, very well in this league, particularly the Vikings, but, also us coming on strong. And by the end of the season, like I said, it could be where, not a lot of teams have beaten Austrian teams outside of Austrian teams. And I think that's something that Austria could be really, really proud of, and something that has been kind of proof in an international scale. Because, once the Big Six went down, right, and both the Raiders and the Vikings participated in the Big Six, that was the last big international competition against the best teams in Europe. Now, obviously, in the CEFL or whatever variation that also the Vikings played in, I think they played in CFL last year, but ETCT prior, whatever the case may be, the Austrian teams have done really well in international competition outside of the Big Six, but that was without German teams outside of Schwäbisch, who we ended up losing to in the CEFL final last year, who's also a very, very good team. But we had been showing that, Raiders and Vikings are very, very good and very competitive internationally, but not against the Braunschweigs or, obviously Schwäbisch, but Dresden's or whatever powerhouse from Germany is. And now, and by the way, when we were playing Big Six against these teams, we were playing by GFL rules. So my first year as a Raider, the Austrian League was 1 American, no European imports. And the Big Six was, if I get this correctly, 5 Americans, 5 Americans. And European imports were kind of limitless. I don't exactly remember the rules, but I remember that we had like 12-ish imports. So similar to the ELF, actually. But we only played them a couple times a year. Now it's our everyday team, which is a huge advantage. And the Vikings, I think, went into the Big Six with even less imports. I don't know how much they even changed their teams compared to the AFL rosters. And, we've boded well in that. But now that it's an even playing field, right? It's an even playing field in terms of import rules and everything like that. Um, the Austrian players are really put a showcase on, in my opinion. Like we lost a running back, Tobias Bonatti Hasselante shows up. One of the best linebackers in the league is Thomas Schnorr, playing for the Vikings, Graz Giants product. Leon Ballig is a great player. Hovart's a great player. Ben Straight has 3 picks in the season. You're welcome, Ben. We're playing with an all Austrian offense outside of myself and a Finnish right tackle. Now that, unfortunately Logan got hurt. And we're one of the best offenses in the league in terms of yards per game, points per game, whatever the case, whatever metric. It's on our defense, Vincent Muller is showing out and stepped his level up. Ruben Saba is playing really, really well. It's just, to be successful in this league, your national players have to be really, really good and have to play really, really well. And that is the foundation of your team. And it's not a coincidence that after 6 weeks, Austrian teams are 10-2. And I think that's something that Austrian football can be really proud of. Really, really proud of. Yeah. Raiders Vikings in Klagenfurt is just like, I don't know. I think 2015 through 2017 we were in Klagenfurt. So I don't know. I think it would be great. I think it would be great for Austrian football. I don't know if people actually want to see it though. I don't know. I think I would enjoy it because it's tradition almost at this point. But we'll see. I'm not so sure the league wants to see that. I think we and the Vikings were put in the same conference for a reason, not only because of geographics, but also because hopefully we would knock each other out. But it looks like it could be a scenario where both of us get in, and we'll see. We will see. It would be bananas. If no matter what happens, you guys should go to the final. Though the stadium in Klagenfurt is beautiful, the Vorcher Sea is beautiful, Klagenfurt is beautiful. It would be a really, really great September trip. I think the Raiders against Sea Devils would be a cool finale. Yep, I think it would be too. But you could shut down the league. Yeah, I mean, I think it's already kind of happening organically as long as both of us keep it up and stay healthy. I saw a lot of Viking Raiders games, and it was always a freaking show. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's always a really high quality game. It's always been 2 really good football teams playing each other. Good to hear. Just bring the trophy next year and play the best of 3 with Raiders and Vikings. Yeah, that could happen too. But like I said, it's still a long season. Still really a lot of football to be played. Barcelona's really good. I mean, the top 6-7 teams all could be championship contenders. But I think the bye week's a time to kind of step back and reevaluate things. And if you step back and reevaluate the standings of the ELF at the moment, after 6 weeks, Austrian football can be really proud. And I think I will wrap it up on that. Thank you guys for joining me. If you guys don't have any more questions, then I will go get ready for practice because it is a practice night. Honestly, did you expect the Austrian teams to be that good in comparison? I didn't know. It was really, really difficult. I knew both of us would be really good, but the Vikings being undefeated at this point is, I don't want to say unexpected, but is a huge accomplishment. And 4-2 for us. Maybe 4-2, 5-1, 6-0. It's hard to say because it's just very different. It's very different. I mean, the Raiders roster from this year, or the Vikings roster from this year to last year, is very, very different, especially on the offensive side of the ball and on the defensive side of the ball. And both teams have been fortified from players all around Austria, which is new. It was really hard to tell. So I don't know if my expectation is that combined would be 10-2 at this point, although it most certainly doesn't surprise me. So, good. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching, as always. We will have a show next week. I'm sure he'll watch it. For me, it's just kind of a podcast, which I dabbled in COVID, and you know, sometimes it's nice just to talk and not interview and do everything. But thank you guys so much for watching and following us. It's really been a pleasure of my football career, to be honest, to play in this league. I'm very happy that it's happened. I'm very glad to be a part of it, and I'm very glad that you guys find it so enjoying. That makes it all worthwhile. I'm not going to do the Spotify playlist because mainly I'm not sure if I know how to, and it just kind of feels wrong without Paul. So hopefully Paul will be. He has a bird. That's right. That saved my mind and life in during COVID. And and we will have a show next week and get more into a detail about the preview of the big showdown next Sunday. So, no problem, guys. My pleasure. Thank you guys so much. Uh, and yeah, thank you. Have a great, great, great rest of your day and weekend and week, and see you next week. Ciao, cacao.